Local government elections 2021 is upon us, and on Monday, South Africans will go to the polls to decide who will lead them for the next 5 years. Let's look at a few important points to keep in mind on Monday, 1 November. Remember that we are in lockdown, level 1 at the moment, and that there are still some important measures you have to take when arriving at the polls on Monday. Wear a mask when you register and vote as per lockdown regulations for all persons in public places. If you don't have a mask or face cover, the election officials will refuse you entry to the voting station, and you will not be able to register or update your address or vote. Keep a distance of 1.5 meters from your fellow voters, election officials, party agents, and observers at all times while at your voting station. Wait your turn before entering the voting station, as only a limited number of people may be gathered inside the venue at the same time. Liquid sanitizer will be sprayed on your hands by an election official before you enter and leave the voting station. IEC says that they care for the safety of the election officials, and they will be provided with masks and face shields to wear in line with government regulations. Bring your own pen for filling in forms and marking ballots at the voting station. In any event, election officials will be sanitizing all pens at the voting station after each use. When inking your thumbnail, election officials will check that it is dry before applying the ink and will ask you to wait a moment before you move on to ensure that the ink has dried before your hands are sanitized on departing the voting station. All voting station surfaces will be wiped with 70% alcohol disinfectant before and after use. Say if it's not okay. Politely speak up if people are too close to you or if anyone's behavior makes you feel uncomfortable, and keep yourself and others safe. Regarding the voting, you start at finding your correct voting station, and for this you can go to the IEC's website, elections.org.za, and there you can ensure that you have the address for the correct voting station for the voting district in which you are registered. Most voting stations are located in community buildings like local schools, churches, or community centers. Where buildings are not available, voting stations are set up in tents, in parks, or other open land. In some sparsely populated rural areas, we use specially adapted vehicles as mobile voting stations. Every voting station has large clear signs outside marking it as a voting station. Present your valid identification document to the door controller at the entrance of the voting station. There will be an election official who serves as a door controller, and he or she will check that you have a valid identification document. And remember, that must be the green bar-coded ID book, smart card ID, or temporary ID certificate. No passports, no driver's licenses, because these documents will then be scanned and present you with a slip that confirms that you are a registered voter. The door controller will also tell you when it is your turn to enter the station and will advise where to go once inside the voting station. Check that you are on the voters' roll. Once inside the voting station, you will proceed to the voters' roll table where election officials will take your ID document and check for your name and identity number on the segment of the National Common Voters Roll for that voting district. Your name will then be crossed off. This is a manual mechanism for ensuring that voters only vote once. An election official will then ink your left thumbnail. This is a special ink that will not wash off your nail for several days. This ink mark will show everyone that you have participated in the election. Get your ballot papers. An election official will then hand you your ballot papers, which they will tear off at a pad. An election official will then hand you your ballot papers, which they will tear off a pad. Each ballot paper has a unique number, and you must make sure that there's a stamp at the back of your ballot papers to verify that they were issued to you on that election day. For national and provincial elections, voters generally receive 2 ballot papers, one for the national and one for the provincial election. Whereas for municipal elections, voters in metros and local councils receive 2 ballot papers, one for a ward councillor and one for a political party as part of the PR section of the election. Voters in areas which form part of a district council receive a 3rd ballot paper for the district council election. Get your identification document stamped. Your green ID book, if that was your identification document, will then be stamped by an election official to show that you participated in the election. And just to remind you again, no passports, no driver's licenses will be allowed. Find an empty voting booth and make your cross. You will then be directed to an empty voting booth. Here you will place your X in the box next to the political party and or candidate of your choice. To avoid a spoiled ballot, ensure that you make only one mark on each ballot paper and that your mark is clear. If you make a mistake, call an election official and they will provide you with a new ballot paper. When you are finished, fold your ballot papers in half and leave the voting booth. Just a reminder from the IEC, you are not allowed to photograph your marked ballot paper, so no selfies, please. You can then cast your vote. An election official stationed at the ballot box will check that there is a stamp at the back of each of your ballots. Having made your mark, drop your completed ballot paper through the slot in the top of the ballot box. And to ensure that voting is free and fair, after casting your vote, you will then be directed to the exit. Remember that political party representatives and independent observers, both national and international, are present throughout the voting and counting process to observe the process and to ensure it is free and fair. And now we can go to the ballot papers itself. I have taken an example from Johannesburg, the city of Johannesburg, and I have just chosen a random ward there. And this is what a ballot paper will look like right throughout the country for all voters. The name of the candidate will be on the paper, and you make your cross next to the candidate that you want to vote for. Remember to keep that cross within the frame. Don't go outside it, otherwise your ballot will be spoiled. And then you go and look for the candidate that you want to vote for, and you make your cross on that ballot paper. For people living in bigger municipalities, the metros like Johannesburg, there will also be the PR ballot papers. And on that papers, you will vote for a specific political party. And you go through the same process. You choose the party that you want to represent you in this metro or bigger municipality, and you make your cross next to that party. And this is how easy it is to vote on 1 November. Nothing difficult about it, but if at any moment you have a question to ask, please ask one of the election officials at the polling station to help you and make sure that you cast your vote in a free and fair manner.